ready to shoot it live. Or some of y'all must be uply mobile. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, we have two candidates, establishment candidates, that are not joining us today. Kenyon McDuffie office confirmed that he was available from 8 to 9, but Anita Bond's office has been completely unresponsive. She is the front runner in this race. When you're sitting on the chairman of the, we have a House crisis, and we also have a misappropriation. Bonds is not here, but we're gonna keep her chair open. We all clear with that. That's Anita Bond's not an automatic shoe-in because she's an incumbent. And stop voting because somebody has a little D behind their name, recognition. And shout out to our brothers and sisters in Haiti who are being exploited as we very speak with your taxpayer dollars. So when we say taxation without representation.
And good evening, everybody. And I just want to also thank these candidates who have shown up to be here this evening with us to share, because we have presided over this kind of dysfunctionalism. And they've done it, and they've done it, and done it. And that's why tonight we want to talk about some questions and some issues that are before us in terms of housing. I want to thank you for being here this evening, for taking the time out of your time to speak and to share your thoughts. Thank you.
All right. Is it all?
And I think the first thing to ask is why to my left?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Jennifer Jalencia Muhammad, and I am running because I have found my life's mission, and that is to stand up and speak up for the downtrodden. And when I say the downtrodden, I don't think there's anything lower than a human being that does not have somewhere to live. It does not have an adequate place to live. I not only speak about this, but I'm the founder of the New Royal Family of Advocates for the Homeless. For the last 2.5 years, myself and the New Royal Family have serviced outside of the 2nd and D Street shelter to our homeless kings and queens, as I call them, because they are not less than, because they don't have an abode.
Sister Muhammad, I want to just keep it short because we've got a number of folks to go through. I want to thank you for that. And everybody, please be as brief as possible in terms of answering that question. Well, go to the next.
Yes, sir.
Brother Graham.
My name is Graham McLaughlin, and I'm running because what Reverend Hackler talked about, it's about values. And one of the things that I've seen in our city, a city with a $20 billion budget, the most per resident of any city in the nation, is that many of us want the same things: equity, opportunity, affordable housing, etc. Yet we're not achieving that. I've tried to do that in my own life, opening my own home to guys coming out of prison, mentoring 2 boys, engaging in a number of other activities as well. But really, as you think about your 2 votes, it's about who can use that budget, who can steward that $20 billion most effectively to serve all of us and to serve those who need it the most.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good to see you. I'm Alyssa Silverman, and for the last 8 years, I have served you, and it's been my honor to serve you as an at-large council member. I'm one of the 2 independents on the council. And Reverend, I asked that question a few months ago, why run again? And it's because the big money special interests still dominate the agenda at the Wilson Building. When I first ran in 2013, those big money special interests dominated the agenda all the time. But we have started to build, with your help, a coalition of residents and businesses that are persuading my colleagues to do the right thing, to build housing that's affordable for working families, to make sure that this city is safe and provides, an education for kids around the city that's equitable. We still haven't gotten there, and that's why I'm running again.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kareem Marshall. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian. School. My wife and I had to make some really hard decisions about what we thought our future would look like. And those choices weren't great. It relied on random chance through a lottery, spending a lot more money on a different house, or spending a lot more money on private school. I'm running because I looked at our council, and I know that they know how troubled our education system is. But for the last 8, 10, 12 years, they've done nothing but infight with the mayor or infight with each other. I'm running because I'm a problem solver. I want to fix this issue. I want to fix affordable housing, make sure that it's actually affordable to people who work real jobs. And I want to make sure that our public safety system is structured around building community as opposed to just putting people in jail. That's why I'm running.
Thank you.
Housing justice in the District of Columbia. I also understand how we need to reform our public safety and our education system that we have. I am the biggest proponent of calling for, in our education system, returning vocational trades back to the public schools in the communities where these schools were shut down, and getting the opportunity to those who wouldn't have the opportunity right within their own neighborhoods. And I'll keep it short there. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred Hill.
Good evening, everyone. My name's David Schwartzman. I'm a retired Howard University professor. I'm a climate scientist and a human rights activist for many years. Why am I running? Because the Wilson Building is developer-occupied territory. And I want to organize so it will be people's in DC. And I will work with them in collaboration for the other DC that is possible. Okay, so that's why I'm running.
Thank you, David.
Good evening. My name is Giuseppe Nios, and I'm running to be your next council member at large. I'm a third because I believe that the council has lost touch with the voters of Washington, D.C. The number one thing that I've been listening to awards is, what has the council done for me recently? I'm running to bring back better public safety. I'm running to bring back a robust local economy. And I'm also a big advocate of technical development in trade schools, as well as making sure that our parents have the right to choose where their children is best set for their education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. TENAC, the DC Tenants Advocacy Coalition, is pleased again to bring forums before elections. When we got called from sponsors of this forum, and Rob Villardo and myself, Tom Gregory, are here representing TENAC. I'd like to start off tonight with what many of us think underlies some of the problems in DC, and not just in DC, but all of the nation. It seems like that people care less and less about fairness and ethics and morality. And you even hear people who are strong capitalists saying, greed is good, it drives people, it pushes them. And here we have, and me to believe, that the revenues, the income for the top 3 people in the United States is equivalent to the bottom 50%. Saying, it doesn't matter whether what you say is true or not. It doesn't matter if people lie. If you don't go to jail, or maybe even if you do, if you win and come out ahead, it's all right to do whatever you want to do. To me, that's not civilized. Now, if you win this election, if you become one of the at-large candidates, you will have an opportunity to do something about that in D.C. And I'm wondering, with all the pressures, all the temptations that will be upon you, how can you assure us that you will maintain ethics, fairness? How can we depend on you when normally people say you can say anything if you get what you want? How do we know that we should choose you? What will you do? And since we went starting Candidates right to go left. Let's start on this other side. And let's go 1 minute apiece.
Thank you for the question. Are inundated with training. And I, for sure, have all of the ethics training through the U.S. Navy every single year. So if that doesn't tell you something, then let me just say this. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian, born and raised here, and my love for Washington, D.C. is strong. I would not do anything to put D.C. in harm's way. Ethically speaking, again, I fall back on my officer career in the U.S. Navy Reserve, because to be an officer, you have to show a level of commitment. You have to show a level of honor and integrity. These are things that, to be an officer, you can't take that away. Thank you.
How much time do we have? Okay, so I would urge people to look at my record. Go to my website, have palm cards around, and has my website, and I have my record there. My record in fighting for statehood, my record in fighting for environmental justice, which goes back to the early 80s, actually. So I've been an activist on environmental justice. Once if I'm elected, first of all, my salary will go to a fund to organize, because I don't need a salary. I have a pension from Howard University and Social Security. Okay, so I don't need a salary. And the bottom line is, no one is perfect. Am I corruptible? Sure, I'm a human being. So the public needs to have an oversight over me. And so my office will be used to organize that oversight, not only of me, but the whole council and the mayor. That's what we need. We need the public input, because good bills will not pass unless there is a movement outside the council. I'll give you one example.
Thank you so much.
1 year ago, we had a major victory. Am I on the phone? Okay, I'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Mine started with my mom and my dad, my grandparents, and how they raised us as a family to be honorable. Even when we stepped off the path, we knew what was the right thing to do. That's what led me into the military, coming out of the military with an honorable discharge, into business ever since then. But what I've watched in this, the opportunity for those who sit in a position of power to make the wrong decisions. For the last 25 years, I've held this government accountable by attending these council sessions, calling them out on the bad decisions that they've made. And I will, for everyone across this city. I've had offers since I announced my candidacy to step aside with sizable checks in front of me. And I'm standing here before you now because I didn't take them. Thank you.
So, my name's Kareem Marshall, and I've worked for the district government for about 12 years. And in that time, I have personally had discretionary authority for more than $50 million. There's never been a penny that's gone missing. There's never been a penny that's unaccounted for. I've already shown my person actually gets those grant dollars. So I've already shown that I'm incorruptible. But the way that I know that I will stay incorruptible is because every day I have to go home to my wife and for whatever the dollar amount. So I would say this. We complain a lot about corrupt politicians and their inability to make hard decisions. Stop electing corrupt politicians. You have the ability to elect two people that aren't incumbents and aren't Democrats. Make a different choice.
Thanks so much. Tom, you, Patrice, Ryan, know that I have an 8-year track record of taking on the big money special interests. And who are those in our city? They're real estate folks. And unfortunately, they're the universities who didn't want to give you paid leave. Okay? I took them on, I've taken them on time and again, and that's the reason why they're trying to kick me off the council. This isn't the first time. Let's remember back 4 years ago, we were at the same.
This community and this society.
So I want to thank you for answering the question, and I want to just call out those who are not here to answer the question. Now, as we talk about these, last week HUD released a scathing report outlining the many failures of D.C. Housing Authority, including a high rate of vacancies and widespread unsafe conditions. If elected, what will you do to address the need to radically transform public housing and make it the healthy, safe, and stable housing that D.C. residents deserve? I'll start off with you, Sister Muhammad. Yes.
Yes, sir. I have a big belief about the clergy getting involved. Throughout the pandemic, churches closed down, and I felt like if the churches would open up their basements or what have you to those that are in need, and we join together as a community, that we could actually go against HUD. We could say, HUD, you got money, but we have the clergy that can step in and open up their churches. So I won't see anybody in need, anybody homeless, or anybody that's being evicted. And violence, that's another aspect of not having adequate homes. And so if we can work with the hotels, where they open the hotel for someone who is in, put our ideas together and make a change. We can say, HUD, you do your thing, and then our community will come together to make a change.
I would say two major things: transparency and action that leads to results. On the transparency, we need to have clarity on the numbers, the metrics, the KPIs that were the key performance indicators that we're looking at to make sure that we are effectively managing. And then second, we need to get things done. I'll commend Alyssa. She has been pushing on this issue for a number of years, as have other advocates. And I think we need folks who push, and I think we need folks who can negotiate and get things done. If you look at the environmental movement, you need Greenpeace hitting the whaling ships, and you need Sierra Club rolling up their sleeves and negotiating with the big oil companies. I think what I can bring to the table is be a tempered radical and really negotiate effectively and say, hey, we need...
Thank you. And thank you, Graham, for that's what we need. We need to wrestle control of the Board of Commissioners, because the Housing Authority is run like a corporation, and it is treated as an arm of their Department of Economic Development. They've lost the mission, which is to house our lowest income families. And it gets back to the big money special interests. It gets back to what David said about developer occupied territory. There's a reason why units are vacant. They aren't investing in money so that they have to say, well, we just have to redevelop it and give it so people can live in safe, dignified housing.
Or the Housing Authority on this panel. And I can tell you that that report is only the surface of the dysfunction at the Housing Authority. It's also a reflection of complaints that a lot of the people in this room have been making for the last decade. So when we talk about how to fix the Housing Authority, I think we need to be talking about it from two layers. We need to talk about the actual operations. We need to recognize that the federal government has been systematically defunding public housing authorities over the last 40 years. We need to think about the fact that as a jurisdiction, we don't work particularly well together as an executive and a legislature to develop some of the plans that are necessary in order to address some of our more intransitable issues. So the first thing I would do as a council member is to actually work with the entities that are governed. I would make sure that we are absolutely clear on the real count of units. I would make sure that we're clear on what the development plan is for the entirety of the city. And I would make sure that your values are reflected in these plans.
Thank you.
And then work together to implement them over the next 10 years, 4 years.
Thank you. What I would do as the council member at large is, with the experience of 25 years in successful business here in the district, what I saw is that there was not a strong level of accountability, oversight, and backup plans as to how you monitor what's being done. I've watched the directors say time and time again that there's a plan and that there's what her plan was, but she didn't have the professionals, the experts around her to shake her on the shoulder and say, that's a bit over the top. And if you have a plan that measures things accurately, then you can see that before the challenges come. The other thing is that the chair of the Housing Committee and Executive Administration should themselves not have to wait for DCHA or HUD to give a report. Our council should be checking on these people day to day. Thank you.
As you stand up, David, I want to let you know.
I'll start with what?
David, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. I want to let everybody know that there's some cards here at the table that you can put some questions on, and we invite you to come and pick up the cards if you want to put a question on. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so I will start with, I think, what must be done. The units have to be fixed. The budget has to be increased. I've been a member of Fair Budget Coalition for many years. I've been a member of Empower DC. The funding of the budget to fix public housing. Fix the vacant units, number one. The treatment of public housing tenants has been criminal. Continually in the last 2 years with the DOEE, with Tommy Wells. I've discussed this in testimony to the council, and this is criminal. The criminals need to be brought. Let me just finish.
Thank you. All right.
I always obey the call.
Thank you for the question. Trust, but verify. When I was a young engineer working on my merchant ships, there was a time where the junior engineer was going out for his rounds in the engine room. To me, there was a fuel leak that was never reported to me as the engineering officer on watch. Now, we all can imagine what a fuel leak in the middle of the ocean on a ship can do. It can start a fire, and it's not a good thing. I learned a valuable lesson that day to trust my junior engineer, but make sure to go on the round myself and verify with my own 2 eyes that everything is kosher. Now, when it comes to the housing, clearly the council member was not going to the various houses that had black mold in it or damaged facilities. Had she gone there, she would have learned with a boots on the ground approach, this is how we need to improve.
Thank you. As we go to the next question, I know you got a question, but I want to make a comment. Whole crew from Boston, because I fought them up in Boston. They didn't bring any solutions. They were just padding a new job. And so we got to really begin to talk about what's gone on in this city, that there has been malignant neglect, deliberate neglect. And it goes far beyond somebody not showing up to find out black mold, because black mold been there for down with us. And if you're not outraged, then you shouldn't be running for office. You got a question?
Yeah, I've got a question. Hi, my name is Rob Durham with TENAC, DC Tenants Advocacy Coalition. And I feel that we ain't going to get anywhere unless we clarify or abolish that the mayor does not have the implied authority to waive affordability requirements on a project-by-project basis. The projects don't come down through the pipeline. She waives the affordability requirements. I saw where Councilmember Silverman said that in an article, and the question is if you are elected to the council, will you vote to clarify or to abolish that the mayor does not have this authority, has to abide by the law, 0 to 30% affordability income, 0 to 30% area income, etc.? Yes, no, all the way down the line. Lindsay?
Could you please repeat that question?
Okay. When a project comes down the line, the law says there has to be so and so many affordable units. For people making 0 to like $30,000.
Section 8 laws.
Yeah, 30,000.
This is actually the trust fund.
Right.
I'm talking about the trust fund.
Yeah. Okay, so it's got, in other words, it's got affordability requirements. You got to provide for low income, really low income, middle low income, middle income. The mayor has the implied authority. She's saying she has the authority to say no and waive it for each project that comes down the pipeline. Will you, if elected, support a bill to clarify or abolish the mayor being able to do that, so they have to then abide by the legal requirements to build a certain amount of affordable housing? Will you abolish that, or will you allow the mayor or whoever is mayor to continue to waive these requirements that they build affordable housing for their cronies, for their buddies, for their donors, for whoever? Yes or no?
No.
You will not support that. In other words, you will.
I think she said she doesn't like it.
Will you get rid of that ability of the mayor to do that?
I would like to get rid of that, and I hope that I'm answering your question. I am for a certain amount being built.
In other words, do you want to take that ability away from the mayor?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Graham?
Yes.
Alyssa?
So let me just clarify. So we're talking not about the housing authority here, but the Housing Production Trust Fund that you are putting as taxpayers $450 million into this year. And what you're talking about is a bill I have currently before the council saying, follow the law, Mayor. 50% of the money needs to go to, I hate to use the jargon, but 0 to 30% AMI units. Deeply affordable units, people working at the minimum wage. We've never followed it. We need to start following it, and I look forward to everyone supporting my bill.
I'd actually go further. I don't think HPTF should be used for anything other than affordable housing. Like, we currently use it as mezzanine financing to close the gap in projects. They can get that money in the market. We shouldn't be subsidizing that with public money at all.
Okay, but would you support that?
Yeah, sure, but I'd also offer a floor amendment to make it 100%, not 50.
I would take issue with that that's a dream thing you're having
Sure, but that's how I feel.
Might never get to the vote. Okay.
I'm against the mayor having that ability or authority. One of the other things that we really need to consider is that when we look at the models of income, I will be pushing to have the income based on the ward as opposed to the current model that we use. That's how we get to an average median income of affordability, and that will include the 0 to 30%.
Could you clarify that?
So right now, what we use is a 50, 60, and 80%.
Right.
We don't even touch the 0 to 30. But one of the reasons that we don't touch the 0 to 30 is because we consider incomes of Alexandria, Fairfax County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, all of those that do not have the same measurement as Washington, D.C.
I agree.
Taking it out.
Okay.
I agree with Alyssa and Fred, what they have to say. This is just the first step. The D.C. Auditor's Report exposed systematic violation of developers' trust fund mechanism in itself is a failed system because it's a trickle down of affordable housing for the majority of people, but it drives up rents because it's based on creating market rate and luxury housing. So this is the root of gentrification and displacement of the black residents of D.C. We need to move to a different model, and that is social housing and community land trusts. Decommodify housing. Housing is a human right. And that's where our taxpayers' money should go. It should fund those solutions.
Thank you very much.
To clarify, this is a yes or no question, correct? I hate to say it, but can you please repeat the question just so I make sure I get the language right? Because
Sure. The mayor currently is saying that she has the authority to, when all these projects go through, the law says that you got to build so many units from $0 to like $30,000 income. So many units, 30 to 80, 40,000, 50,000, whatever, 60 to, and she's saying, no, let's waive it all. So that way, these projects go through and they are supplying her 1% people with.
Okay, I understand. I don't believe that we should be waiving requirements because we specifically work to negotiate the requirements in various contracts, so we should not be waiving requirements at the last minute. So I believe, to answer your question accurately, I don't think the mayor should have this ability to veto the requirements.
Then a follow-up on the vouchers, because it's a real ticklish, thorny issue. Now, we believe, and I'm sure everybody does in this room, that everybody should have a home, and everybody should be housed, and housing is a human right, and that people should have vouchers, and the wait list should be opened instead of being closed. It's now people are waiting decades for vouchers. However, it looks like the mayor has come up with a policy that places people that are voucher recipients in housing without the social services they need. It's just a small percent of voucher recipients. So they will go, and what is happening in Tom's building, not my building, Tom's building, other buildings, where since these people, voucher holders haven't been screened, and they need social service housing, like behavioral health housing for the mentally ill, and addiction housing, like halfway houses and all, they put them into rent control housing, and it's causing chaos. People are subject to violence, threats, murder, It's making certain buildings, destroying one's peaceful communities. Now, we're not saying these people shouldn't be housed. We're not saying they shouldn't get a voucher. What we are saying is, instead of placing them recklessly in these buildings, and they are causing themselves harm because they don't have the social services, they're getting arrested, causing drug deals. It's a terrible thing for them, and they get in problem. So, would you support, as a solution, the social service agency deciding before someone is placed in housing whether they can handle independent living or need to be placed in halfway houses, centrally run facilities, which are housing run by behavioral health, mental health agencies, etc., with the social services that are supplied. So would you support that as a solution instead of just placing people recklessly in and they're causing harm themselves?
A very nuanced thing, but I think it makes common sense what you're saying, that the social services, to help out the maximum amount of people, it makes sense that they would have a handle on where they're located. I think what you're saying makes sense.
The rapid rehousing bill, which I support. I think Alyssa does too. And the other bill was the migrant services bill, which was a terrible bill. But let me address the question. So there are people getting vouchers, obviously, that have a lot of challenges. because of what Reverend Hagel referred to, the war on the poor. Okay, because people are traumatized by poverty, they're traumatized by addiction. Okay, I don't blame these people. They need help. They need mental health services. They need all kinds of services. So I think that is important. This was raised actually by a caseworker at today's hearing, and she made a good point. So this should be provided. And yes, if putting people with vouchers in non-rent control buildings is a solution, I would support it. I don't know yet.
Yes, just building managers and landlords agreed, well, we will provide the social services necessary in our buildings, but since it costs money, that didn't happen. That's what I heard. Anyway, but buttressing that is the fact that, from what I've heard, that we don't, the buildings and landlords just refuse to even make contact with social service agencies. They just call the police.
This is another part of where the wraparound services that you hear everyone talk about in this city don't really reach the people that it's intended for. You cannot assume that everyone you throw into an apartment can manage the space. I've personally seen as a building inspector someone get put into an apartment from the street, and within a week, the appliances and the cabinets were off the wall. The appliances were sold because they had a drug habit. That comes down to improper oversight. That's that follow-up that I talked about just a second ago. We cannot assume that everyone is ready. We have to make sure that they go through the evaluation process to show us that. And then through that process, if we can identify that they're lacking the mental capacity, that they need other services that can help them get there one day, then we move in that direction before we just throw someone into a building.
Thank you much.
So the short answer is yes, I'd support that. But I think the reason we're dealing with this problem is that the solution that the government came up with was it was more important to get people off the street and into housing first. And the assumption, the promise that was made was that they would provide services through the government along with that placement. Now the challenge that you're experiencing is that those services haven't been doing the oversight necessary to say this money has been appropriated for this purpose, but it's not being spent. Why is that? And what solution do we need to come up with to make sure that it's being delivered? I think we have to be very clear with our council members. We need to expect them to be able to do the follow-up throughout the course of the year. Oversight doesn't just happen in January and March and April. We have to make sure that we're paying attention all year. That's how we make sure that the government actually does its job. That's how we make sure that your tax dollars are being spent appropriately.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do want to clarify what we're talking about when we're talking about voucher holders. If you work the minimum wage, for the minimum wage in this city, you can't afford a market rate one-bedroom apartment. Okay, so there are thousands of voucher holders who live in rent-controlled buildings and you don't know that they're voucher holders. What we're talking about is a specific type of voucher called permanent supportive housing. And these are the vouchers that were used to move people from tents indoors into homes. And the reason why it's called permanent supportive is for the services attached to it. When you get either a local rent supplement voucher or a Section 8 voucher, as you call it, that doesn't come with any services. That's just because you're low income. You're working at CVS and it doesn't pay a lot. The permanent supportive housing vouchers come with services, and the issue is not that the landlords haven't provided the services.
Thank you.
Reverend, but the city hasn't held up its end.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
I don't think that we can always, as a city, and especially people of privilege, and especially white people, say, I want X to happen and Y to happen, and I want to live in my beautiful home, and I want everybody to be supported, and I want this and I want that. We have to view that we are interconnected in our shared liberation, and I think when we think about that, it means that, sort of to Reverend Hagler's point on the outrage that we should feel on 15-year life expectancy differences and 84x wealth gap differences and the highest senior food insecurity in the nation, and then sort of say, well, like, folks are living in buildings and gosh, they're disrupting buildings, and absolutely there needs to be services, but it's just, this is such a broad question of all of the things that we need to be doing as a city, and this is sort of the manifestation of the tip of the iceberg of all kinds of challenges. So yes, I believe we should provide more effective mental health services, and the government will not save us on this, and we need to think about how to lean in as a community together.
As a permanent supportive housing case manager, I know firsthand what is going on in terms of support with mental health, substance abuse, and the like. I believe in the housing first model because I don't want to see anyone out in the cold. We go to our warm abodes and we have people that are still out on the street, but I believe that the support services should go hand in hand. And if those in power can't figure that out, then we have to come together as a community for solutions. I deal with this every day. I go myself to these mental health providers and connect the dots myself. I'm not really waiting on someone else. And when I'm in office, I'm not going to change. I like to be up in the action. I like to see a change, and I'm not waiting on anyone else. So others to do the same. Because I believe the unity is truly our answer, and we should feel pain for those that are suffering, and we should do something and not be able to sleep at night knowing a fellow human being is hurting.
Thank you much. The Office of the Attorney General found that 3 companies, Darrow Management Services, Darrow Realty, and Infinity Real Estate violated civil rights by denying voucher holder access to renters and by also imposing other kinds of illegal schemes to keep low-income people out of their buildings. It was found to be occurring in those cases in at least 15 buildings. And it was in Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 3. These are not the only companies. Let's be honest, right? These are the ones that got caught. What would you put in place to safeguard low-income and working families from this kind of racism and discrimination? I'm going to start with you, Sister Muhammad.
I will certainly continue to meet with the community to have an outcry for these injustices. I would like to put a bill in place that actually chastises, to be like, those companies, because it's much more than those 15, because I work this every day. Putting fines in place and having we as council to actually oversee this, to go into the places and see about this ourselves and not let it be remote, that we go and see about it. And so I would like to put a bill in place that will actually fine those that are discriminating against those in low income status.
Thank you.
I wouldn't answer that with my own knowledge because it will be limited and have significant blind spots. So as we think about the way we make policy, we should center it and hear from those who are most impacted. So would create a working group of both individuals who have permanent supportive housing vouchers and who have been challenged to find housing or are in it. And also landlords who, we think are good actors or we think are bad actors. Either way, trying to say, hey, why would you or wouldn't you, and really try to create policy that's centered around all of that discussion. And so really I will tell you how I would make a policy on that, but we shouldn't have 13 people in the Wilson building in an ivory tower making policy, and so that's how I would approach it.
Thank you.
What the Attorney General announced today was huge. The biggest settlement, I think, in the country on a housing discrimination case. And what was most outrageous, there was an email from an executive at Darrow saying, I am doing everything in my, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm doing everything in my power to keep voucher holders out of our properties. So what do we need to do, Reverend? And let me say, that case came not from a tenant, but from someone at Darrow. It was a whistleblower who said this is wrong. So what we need to do is first have an make sure that our new Attorney General has as muscular an enforcement approach as the current Attorney General. I'm going to miss Carl Racine. We need to put more money as a council, appropriate more money to the Office of the Tenant Advocate, because the case actually came through the Tenant Advocate and referred to the Attorney General. We need to empower both people like the employee at Darrow and tenants to come forward when wrongdoing occurs.
Thank you very much.
$10 million is a rounding error for the amount of money that those buildings make over the course of a year. I think we need real consequences. And when I say real consequences, I mean the penalty for something like this needs to be so severe that the management of the company knows that they can't risk doing it. So we need to...
They're no longer going to be in property management because of the settlement. That's significant.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so when we talk about penalties, the penalties actually need to be real penalties. And I mean asset forfeiture. I mean, we need to be looking at these properties as potential things that we can take and use for the greater good of the residents of the district. We need to be very serious about making sure that the penalties are so egregious that a company can't just shutter, reincorporate, open up as a new company, and do the same business either here or elsewhere by dodging and abusing the legal process. So that's what I mean by real penalties. I mean, if you do something like this, you don't get to do business in the District of Columbia anymore at all, period.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
If I may, I want to just clarify something, because in that settlement, they cannot do business for life in D.C.
Yeah, I understand that. Right. But if they reincorporate, the people who work there can work here. If they reincorporate, look, dude, you gotta stop. It's mad rude. It's incredibly rude. Can I get my time?
Let me go to Brother Hill now. Brother Hill, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is a case where also the council and this city should exercise DOPA rights. And that's where those landlords, those slumlords in this city, not only lose the right of management, not only lose the right of having a business in the district, but they no longer own the property. If we get to the point of where we start taking property from those slumlords in this city, from leaking pipes, from asbestos, from mold, from collapsing ceilings and low and no income housing facilities, we're going to send a different message. We'll get a different level of respect, because those are the people who are the least of us that need those who can speak up for them to protect them. And that's what I would do as a council at large. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Marshall's point that there needs to be penalties. And our Attorney General, by the way, pointed this out regarding McDuffie's donors, one of whom is a notorious slumlord that is involved with, was involved with Congress Heights property and subjected tenants to intolerably unhealthful conditions. There should be criminal charges, not simply expropriating property and converting it to social housing, perhaps, but also jail time. Okay, when did the very rich ever go to jail? Hello? I ask you, they have very expensive lawyers to get out of it, right? Okay, are they subject to the same laws as us? Hello? Well, we need to enforce criminal penalties.
Thank you.
And I had another important thing to say, but
We have to come back to it next time.
Thank you for the question. I do agree with what Mr. Marshall was saying about, we do need to make sure that we have the utmost penalty when you do commit something like this, because this is egregious, especially in today's age. I also think that we can have different systemic methods of quality assurance to make sure that people can come forward if something's happening that is askew. And lastly, hold on, I forgot what I was going to say lastly, but no, I think that quality assurance makes a lot of sense here, and then the people that are committing these egregious crimes should come to justice.
Thank you. Before I go to my next question, I just want to say these egregious crimes is a part of the culture in Washington, D.C. And it's been structured in that way. So when you basically hit one of them, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's been going on forever in the city. And so, again, it's my cynicism that is based in reality. So I want to just ask, if I may, another question of you. The comprehensive plan calls for racial equity analysis within DC planning and zoning decisions. This mandate has yet to be fully implemented. What role do you hope to play in ensuring meaningful racial equity analysis within development? I'm going to ask Councilmember McDuffie for his answer.
Oh, he's not here.
He's not here, okay. I'm going to ask Councilmember Anita Bonds for... Oh, she's not here either.
Oh, she's not here. She never shows up.
Okay. All right, so those of you who made the commitment to show up and to be here, I ask you that question again in terms of the racial equity analysis. How do we assure that that's a part of development? All right, I'm going to start over here with you, Giuseppe.
Thank you for the question. Growing up in Washington, D.C., one of the things that, as anyone who's grown up here can really value is D.C. is one of the most diverse cities in the country, if not the world. I think London is the only other city that I know that has a cultural of everybody. And because of that, I believe in diversity without displacement. One of the big things I've been finding, especially when I have door knocked, again, in all 8 wards, specifically east of the river, many of the people were saying, yeah, we would like to have some more diversity. We would like to have different exposures to different cultures. And I think that that's very important to listen to our communities to ensure that the path that we view Washington, D.C. going is a path that is very inclusive and make sure that everyone feels welcomed here. Thank you.
I was a member of the coalition to get the REACH Act. And it's a step forward. It's monitoring legislation and programs, but that isn't enough. Yes, we need analysis, and that's good, but we need bills, we need legislation that makes a material impact in reducing racial and economic disparities in D.C. Eliminate child poverty by raising the TANF income support to the highest national level, which happens to be white children in New Hampshire are getting. But black children east of the river are getting 37% of the federal poverty level now. So that's one concrete thing we can do. And there's much more because we have a huge wealth gap, we have a huge income
Thank you very
inequality
much.
in D.C. We got to address that too.
watched council members come in and then move on their own agenda or the agenda of the land-grabbing developers, and then they're not held accountable throughout their tenure in the city. The other thing that zoning laws are being ignored. I mentioned earlier about having a measurement by ward of the income would really shake up this game of what's affordable, because it's only affordable to those who can afford it right now. It needs to be housing justice instead of affordable housing. The other thing that we need to make sure that happens is that as you look at development projects that take place in this city, the small businesses that are being ignored and excluded don't get the chance to hire the local residents.
Thank you.
As what we need. Thank you.
Talk about it.
Okay, who's been in the Wilson building on a Tuesday morning right before a ledge session? Raise your hand. It's a little chaotic, right? I've seen council members have their staff write bills that morning. And that level of working in the sense of last minute work has a reflection on the quality of the bills that we get as residents. So what I can do is I can promise you this. If I'm elected, every bill that I introduce will be at the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. Every bill that gets introduced will already have had a fiscal impact statement, legal sufficiency, and an equity analysis done before introduction. That creates a higher level of conversation for the quality of work that we do in this city. It ensures that we aren't reacting to a decision that somebody made in a room, whether we agree with them or disagree with them. But at the very least, we've already had the conversations before a bill is introduced. So that's what I can promise individually. What I can promise for the body is that I will work as hard as possible with the other council members to make sure that they have the resources and the access to communities so that they can do the same thing.
Thank you.
Let me answer the question. Right now, it's just advisory, so people just ignore it. So here's one concrete way. We have made this change at the council. There's a fiscal impact that's always given, when we do tax abatements, when we're giving people a tax break, the CFO does an analysis. Is this tax break really needed? And often the CFO says it's not. And now what and I used to argue and argue and argue. Now what we do is, okay, if the CFO says that that money's not needed for this company, real estate company likely, then you need a super majority to pass that tax break. So I think, for example, if we're going to ignore if the racial equity analysis is this is bad for Black residents, this is bad for Latino residents, this is bad for people of color, then it needs a super majority of council members to supersede it.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm just frustrated and sad and angry, and that we just have a 15-year life expectancy difference. The fact that a new grocery store just opened, but since it was announced, we've had a baseball stadium and a soccer stadium, and I think 6 grocery stores in Ward 3. And so, to me, it's like, what I don't want to do is demonize one side or the other and say, gosh, this is a lack of investment in structural racism has caused vast differences, to just get stuff done. I'm tired of saying like, oh, we should do this or we should do that. We should just get stuff done. What's it take to get a grocery store? What's it take to incent small retail businesses? Make that happen. It's going to be talking with different groups and getting people at the table and not saying you're the problem, but saying let's just put the investment in that gets it done.
Remember, I would like to introduce a bill that has a community fund. And so that will actually cause all of us to be responsible for whatever disparities or whatever racism that's going on, where we will actually have the whole community to give of their income. So we take care of our community personally. That is not somebody else's job. And so I want to sign it into law that we have one in each ward. And so we begin to take care of ourselves monetarily, spiritually. That will bring down the way we look at some groups or way some groups are treated We take care of the people ourselves, before the people, and we do it ourselves and not wait on anyone else.
Thank you very much. This question is for Councilmember Anita Barnes. I gave to you a piece of legislation that dealt with anti-flipping in Washington, D.C. Never got a response from your office, from anyone on your staff, in terms of that piece of legislation, which is very, very important. And I'm going to ask the rest of you, if you were to, do you see putting in place some kind of anti-flipping of property legislation and possibly what that could look like?
Again, having a heart for those that are hurting and those that are in need. If flipping properties is making monies for those that are rich or what have you, and it's hurting those at the bottom, then I want to put a law in place that actually fines those individuals and those companies for doing such. And again, this problem is going on, it's been going on for eons. And so I think if we put our minds together, again, I'm not a council person that has all the answers. I'm a council person that wants to hear from the community. We have all of the answers together. And so, again, starting something into law and causing punishments for those that are not following humanity, following human rights, and having a heart. Get fined for not having a heart. And flipping and getting rid of people out of their abodes.
Thank you.
I think you want to create policy, obviously, that ensures positive externalities and stops negative externalities, and you don't want to have extraction out of a community of wealth. Without having detail, I don't know if I say, hey, generational wealth through home ownership, and ensure that if we're thinking about gentrification and gentrification with justice, a 30-year mortgage to me is the best way to combat that, or to allow the with justice part. And so I would really think about how do we create the most effective home ownership policies in this city, and certainly, again, ensure that we're not extracting wealth from the community, but would focus on really trying to ensure that every person in DC has a path to home ownership.
Well, Reverend Hagler, I'm interested in your bill. This is a big problem. I don't know about you. I own a house along 8th Street, and I get called almost every day, do you want to sell your house? And I tell them, yes, $5 million for my 800 square foot house, and it's yours. And we joke about it, but what's happening is there are private equity companies that are calling, especially older seniors, getting them to sell their house, then they flip the house and they subdivide it into units. And this is really bad because we're losing the single family. First of all, families are losing generational wealth right there. Second, they're flipping them into units that are no longer single family homes. What we desperately need in this city are 3, 4, 5 bedroom unit homes. We're not building them enough.
Thank you.
I hope you send me your bill. Thanks.
So, Reverend, the interesting thing about flipping is that there's two problems with it, right? Like, it usually is because some senior was bamboozled out of their home. But also, we don't have particularly good contractors in this city. I don't know if any of you remember, one of the sitting council members actually had such a bad flip because she was looking for a move-in ready house. She had such a bad flip that the developer who did the renovation in the house had to buy it back from her. And that's not uncommon. Many residents in the District of Columbia are just looking for a house that they can move into and start to build their family, but instead they end up buying a lemon. And the speculation in the market distorts our housing market, which exacerbates the shortage that we're all living in. So one of the things, actually, go to my website. I actually talk about this in a little bit of a degree at marshallfordc.com. We've got a housing tab. But one of the things that we can do is realign these incentives and make sure that the money that people are making by buying low, holding, putting in a little bit of work into a house, and then selling it at an inflated rate is actually less profitable.
Thank you.
Part of the challenge with the bill is that there is an element of small business that is out there to try to make money. But what the council can do, and what I will do as a council member at large, is that through the permit process that developer, that contractor requests from the city's permission to do the renovation, is also have the question as to what do you plan to do with this project? Because if it is a single family property now and you want to subdivide that property, we can stop it at the door. Right now, we're approving everything. The mayor's also signing off on whatever she wants to sign off because it's their friends that benefit. We have a fail stop. We have a way to minimize the negative impact. With our seniors, I've said 100 times, one of the ways that we can create longevity for our seniors.
Well, I think promoting, putting taxpayers' money into social housing would be a very effective way to allow people renting to save money, coupled with increased subsidy from the city for first home buyers. So what does social housing require? A household will pay no more than 30% of their income for housing. That's in the rapid rehousing bill, by the way. Same provision. It's a big step forward. So that will allow people to save money. And by the way, the passage of the tax hike for the rich, one last year, gave revenue, importantly, to raise the DC earned income tax credit.
Thank you very much.
Of low-wage workers.
Thank you.
That was anti-poverty too. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. People should not be getting taken advantage of by nefarious people that are trying to flip houses and sell them immediately. I think that I am very much an advocate for home ownership, and if someone wants to buy a house and fix it up and live it for the rest of their lives and create generational wealth, hey, more power to them, because that could be a fun project for the rest of their lives. But for someone to come into a community, buy a house, flip it, and sell it, and ruin all the property values for everyone else on the street, I think that is a nefarious thing and not a great thing to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One of the things I just want to just lift up, because when you look at where the money is coming from, the money is not coming from inside D.C. A lot of the money is coming from outside the country. A lot of the money is coming from hedge funds and real estate investment trusts. And people that are making the calls are operating as agents upon the elderly, those who are in nursing homes, preying upon those who basically are struggling to pay their mortgage or repairs. And it's going on consistently and with an abandon. Now, it has not been going on forever, I want to point out. Because after Anthony Williams gave parcels of land to developers for $1, that this thing heated up. And it's been heated up ever since. So let's have some historical perspective of when things changed and flipped in D.C. And the erosion of the black community began to happen. And so, the fact is that I'm just saying let's wear our answers with some history of what has taken place in Washington, D.C. Now, I have a question that if you have 2 votes, and you do have 2 votes, I'm going to ask you, who, other than yourself, who else would you vote for? Sister Muhammad.
They have to be on the ballot.
Right.
But technically, she's a write-in, so.
I really, I admire each and every person that is running, And that is
Even the empty seats? Even the empty seats?
I admire all because I don't know their struggle. They're my predecessor. I'm new to this arena, politics, so I admire those that have tried their best before me. I am a humble spirit, and
So who else would you vote for?
I'm going to have to waive. I'm going to have to pass that question.
All right, let's go to the next one.
Respectfully.
I just got to work hard to get elected myself as a change agent, but it will certainly be someone who shows up.
Well, I will answer the question. I'm a voter just like you are. I'm voting for David Schwartzman with my second vote. I'm voting for myself with like one of my votes, and I'll tell you why. And this question was asked at last night's forum too, and there were some non-answers and answers. You know, today we were in a hearing on the Office of Migrant Services on, this very challenging issue we have, as well as talking about vouchers. And you know who shows up to testify? David. He's there. He's at the Wilson Building. David has been and challenging those who have the most. So he's earned my vote.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I've already asked OCF whether or not I can do this, and they haven't told me whether or not I can, so I won't answer. But I will tell you the person that I am going to vote for is somebody who is bringing a new energy, who is looking at how to make council more responsive, and who is more concerned with results than press releases.
Go ahead. Brother Hill.
I too have the same position. I have made an announcement before, but I need to rethink the next person.
My vote for Alyssa Silverman because she is a champion of working class issues, the paid family leave, fighting wage theft, standing up for domestic workers, standing up for excluded workers. Okay? She's not perfect, neither am I. But she deserved to return to the council and continue to fight and win more victories for the working class in D.C. Because if we tax, the big corporate developer sector will have more revenue, and they're getting a big tax cut from the feds, by the way.
Thank you, David.
Just like wealthy residents did. Thank you.
Thank you. I knew David was going to get it in one way or the other. Thank you, David.
Thank you for the question. And as Mr. Marshall, Mr. Hill, and even Mr. McLaughlin all kind of mentioned, I don't want to step on any toes of the people at the Office of Campaign Finance. I want to make sure that we're playing everything by the books. That being the case, I do believe that DC is ripened for change and that we deserve better. And so my vote will go to the person that is going to help bring that forth. Thank you.
Wow, those were some amazing non-committed answers. That's all I can say. Is there a question over here?
Initiative 82.
Position on Initiative 82. What's your position on it? Giuseppe?
Thank you for the question. My position is businesses know how they should run their own business, and if they choose to pay their employees without the minimum wage without the tip, they know how to do it themselves. For a council member, I would make sure to uphold whatever the vote is, but I'm going to say no at this time.
Well, absolutely support 82, and it's on some of my posters, by the way. And just like I supported 77, and I was with you, Reverend Hagler, when we argued that the repeal of the repeal of 77 was an outrageous assault on democratic rights.
Thank you.
There we go.
I had one of my first jobs as a waiter many years ago. And one of the things that really got to me when I heard this come about was that there are millionaires and billionaires that own these restaurants. And the building with the name on it doesn't sell the food, doesn't serve the food, and doesn't get people to come back in like me today to reinvest money there. I support the worker because they are the ones who give us the special touch to make me want to reinvest. So I am not for those business owners who don't want to make sure people get their worth. Break bread, everybody.
Thank you.
My very first job at 12 was folding pizza boxes for a pizza restaurant, and they paid us in pizza. So yes, I support Initiative 82. I just wish that we had given more information to tipped workers about how their standard of living wouldn't go down if people stopped tipping. And I think that's the one thing that would have made this universal if we had provided that information on the front end. But yes, I support 82.
I support Initiative 82. I supported Initiative 77. I thought it was outrageous that 8 of my colleagues overturned the will of the voters. That's all I've said.
Pretty aligned. If we're going to talk about democracy, if we're going to talk about statehood, and then we're going to overturn the will of the people, we have no leg to stand on. It was a complete abomination that we would overturn the will of the people, and so whatever the will of the people is, I would support.
I wasn't familiar with Initiative 82, so I cheated to hear what that is. And of course, I support workers being tipped. I have been in the service industry many, many years ago, and that was a way to feed my child. So I absolutely support it.
Let me throw a little more education in here, because the tip was developed after emancipation, because they did not want to pay black folks a wage and wanted black folks to grovel for whatever they said. And so the issue is that in no place else are folks really given a subpar wage and the minimum wage. And so I just wanted to clarify that, because the issue is, again, it's a matter of knowing your history, right? Where these things came from and what these things represent and what they continue to support. Got another question? What's the question? I can't see it. Would denying a street named after the mayor for life be denying the will of the people in Ward 8? Question. You didn't hear the question? Let me repeat it. Do you believe that, where is it at? What? Up here.
Question coming in.
Right. Question for the panel. Would denying a street named after the mayor for life be denying the will of the people in Ward 8? Start over here with you, Ms. Muhammad.
I'm going to say, if we're referring to the late Marion Berry, yes, he gave me my first job at 14, so I honor him as an ancestor.
Thank you.
And to answer the question, would denying having a street named after him deny the will of the people? I believe in majority rule. If that is what our citizens want, put his name on the sign.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think generally if citizens speak up for something, we should honor what citizens say. So I'm not familiar with anything specifically that is up for legislation, so if I'm missing that, but would be for any referendum, et cetera, that folks put up. And I think more generally how we, Reverend Hagler, you have done that for us today. How do we make sure that we are honoring history and understanding history as we move forward, so that we move forward in the most effective, equitable way? And I think this speaks to that.
Marion Berry didn't give me my first job, but he gave me probably the most significant endorsement I ever got in 2014. Shocked everyone. He endorsed me, and I think he helped me win that election. The proposal is, so my colleague Trayon White has a proposal to rename Good Hope Road after Marion Berry, and I want to make sure Ward 8 residents don't have some attachment to Good Hope Road. But if there's support in Ward 8 for it, I will support it.
We have streets named after enslavers. We have streets named after kidnappers, torturers, war criminals. I don't see why we wouldn't have a street named after a man who served for 16 years as mayor and then several years thereafter as a councilman. I guess the question is which street? But yeah, if the people who live in Ward 8 want the street named after him, I would definitely support it. I don't see how you couldn't.
I live in Ward 8, yes we do.
Good Hope Road would not be giving hope if we didn't name it after Marion Barry. One of the things that people need to understand is that this man is the one who's responsible for building middle-class African-American families in this city. He was the one who set the road for educational opportunities in this city. He was the one who built a lot of millionaires in this city, but died broke. He didn't care more about himself than he did a lot of other people. So we definitely need to honor him with the name of Good Hope Road to Marion Barry.
Yes, of course. I took my students at Howard University to Good Hope and Naylor to see a slump phenomenon in my environmental geology class. So I know that street pretty well, and of course it should be named after Marion Barry. By the way, the last conversation I had with him was in the toilet, and he expressed a great interest in a DC public bank, by the way, and we need that, and that would be high on my agenda once I am elected, but I'll push forward who's ever elected. And by the way, while I mentioned there are a number of other people and erect monuments for them in our community. I would put out Paul Robeson and Claudia Jones. Look up Claudia Jones. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. We should always protect the will of the people, but especially an icon such as Marion Barry, he was known as the best politician alive, and I think that absolutely we should.
Hold on to the mic because we're getting ready to wrap up. We'll get two more questions and then we'll have some closing statements from you. But this is a short answer. The DC Council is considering legislation to create social housing. Do you support the passage of this bill? Why or why not?
Thank you for the question. I'll have to do a lot more research on this before I give a definite answer. My heart says yes, but I need to do a lot more research just to make sure that, again, I'm big harping on quality assurance, making sure everyone dots their I's, cross their T's, and if it doesn't have some of the things that we've literally talked about in this panel,
sure.
So, yeah.
Well, I've already made several statements before in support of social housing. I'm testifying November 17th at the public hearing that for Janice Lewis George's Green New Deal housing bill, by the way, that Will Merrifield, that was supposed to be a co-host, had a big part in drafting. And so social housing is a great solution for decommodifying housing and giving people, keeping income in people's pockets so they're not paying more than 30% of household income for housing.
Thank you, very good.
Sportsman.
Short answer, absolutely.
Thank you. Kareem Marshall.
Yes, I'd make some additions to it, but conceptually I support social housing.
Councilmember, listen.
With public housing and other oversight are handled and addressed, but yes, directionally.
In short, yes, I support it because my clients are living under it right now. I would like to speak with many that are subject to this type of housing to get their feeling before I make a final decision and turn something into law. But yes.
Thank you. Now, my last question is this. In a place that has no voting representation, would you be in favor of enlarging voting rights by supporting open primary elections? Meaning that everybody can vote, no matter how you're registered. whether you are independent, Green Party, Republican, Democrat, you can vote in the primary. Because right now we're disenfranchising voters. Would you be in favor of changing the law in D.C. to allow for open primary?
I certainly will, and we didn't mention our returning citizens because none of us is perfect. I've made mistakes. I just didn't get caught. They got caught, but give them a chance. So all of D.C. should have the right to vote, and I will sign on the dotted line for that.
Let's get wild. Let's also add ranked choice voting and term limits and a few other things. But yes, I support it.
I'll just say yes.
Yeah, I actually support the Alaska model, which is a blanket primary, which means everybody can run and then you follow it up with ranked choice voting. I think it makes elections a lot less contentious and you get better candidates.
Yes, indeedy.
No, indeed, because primaries there are 4 parties with ballot status, and they have certain points of view, certain platforms. In the South, open primaries for the Democratic primary allowed Republicans to raid those elections and elect a more right-wing candidate. I don't think open primaries are the solution. I think ranked choice voting is a solution in the general election and in each primary as well. So we need to move to ranked choice voting.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me say this, because when you go around and you talk to a lot of young folks are sick and tired of having to declare themselves Democrat, Republican, or anything else, because they are so disenfranchised from the system in the way it has carried itself historically. And so in a sense, we're going to enlarge the ability of people to vote like me. I'm an independent. I have remained an independent because I don't want the Democrats to depend on me, and I don't want the Republicans to depend on me, or the Green Party. Because my spirit is an independent spirit. And I know that there's hundreds and thousands of other people in D.C. that are eliminated from participating in the democratic process because of that ideological value. So I want to raise that up for us to look at. And I think that, we get into these models that come from other places like ranked choice voting. It's not that complicated, y'all. It is not that complicated. It doesn't come down to trigonometry or geometry to get a vote, right? The fact is that's what we're fighting all across the country, is to have get people to have the ballot access and not be denied. Thank you.
The last one, short answer. Rent control was initiated to combat price fixing when the landlords and developers were pushing up rent in D.C. where people were having to abandon residence in D.C. And there was the council looked around, what else was there that might work? And narrowed it down to rent control. Since then, the landlord's influence on the council has corrupted rent control horribly. It's almost been abolished, and it's on its way out every year. Fewer and fewer percentage, smaller percentage of units are under rent control. A lot of people say we need comprehensive reform of rent control to restore the values and fairness to renters. Question, would you support a comprehensive reform of rent control? And I guess let's start to the right this time.
Yes, I would support that.
Yes, rent control should be expanded to all buildings. And protection for tenants needs to be strengthened as well, so the landlords don't get to just raise the rents according to some, formula. We need to protect the tenants because the rents are too damn high. A 1-bedroom rent now, market rate is $2,500 a month. 2 bedrooms is $3,500 a month. The majority of residents in D.C. cannot afford those rents, okay? That's the bottom line. That's why the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is driven by creating market rate housing with a trickle of affordable housing for lower income, is a failed mechanism. Thank you.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, yes, I would.
Okay, well, I'll break with the one-word answer here. So yes, because rent control is such a valuable tool to allow, I would say, there aren't that many tools that we have for middle-income families to live in this city. And rent control is one of them. We need to reform it, though. We need to do comprehensive reform, and it can't be the third rail issue that it is. No one wants to touch it. But this is one of the best tools we have to keep housing affordable in our city, especially, in those big buildings we talked about earlier on an unrelated question, but 4,000 Massachusetts Avenue. How many people live in that building? A lot. And it's rent controlled, and that keeps it affordable for a lot of people who couldn't live there if they didn't have rent control.
Yeah, kind of complementing Alyssa's point, you used the term comprehensive at the beginning, so I guess I would say comprehensive housing planning and really thinking about what in totality is affordable housing. I think that's supply, I think that's thinking about rent, I think that's a lot of other aspects, so I like the comprehensive part of your question.
I want to say thank you for your participation. Thank you for your willingness to run. I want to thank WPFW and TENAC for sponsoring this evening. I want to wish you all the best of fortune and React Radio. Anybody else on this? Have a good evening.
We'll give you an opportunity to close out. Again, I'm going to keep you on a close timer so you can time yourselves. I'm going to give you 1 minute. And the first minute goes to Anita Barnes. Anita, are you here? Anita, are you here? She's in the same place with Kenyon. They're hanging out together again, so they didn't show up here because they figured that they got the votes, I guess. So anyway, we're going to start with you. 1 minute, Sister Muhammad.
First, I have to say I'm so honored to even be in the race. There are so many things that need to be talked about, discussed, and changed in D.C. And I think what I bring is love for human beings, for equality, for justice, for a fellow neighbor, a fellow wayfarer. That is what I stand for, and I'm committed to being the type of councilwoman that will be not sitting in the office, but walking amongst the citizens to see what their needs are. I'm what they call an empathic being, so I feel the hurt of people, and so I really can't sleep if there's another human being that is suffering. And so this is why I entered the race.
10 seconds.
So if we are looking for a change, and there's a saying that says, what the world needs now is love, sweet love.
Thank you,
I
Tom.
am the candidate of your choice. Thank you.
What's your name?
I'm Jennifer Jalencia Muhammad. Write me in on November 8th.
I will pick up on the themes of love and change. There's a lot of supporters in the audience of the different camps, including my love and some of my supporters, and just thank you to you all. This is one of the last debates, and this is tough on families, tough on supporters, etc. And just all of you here, I think, have given a lot of strength to all of the candidates. And on the change point, this is a critical election. You have two choices. Who's going to steward our $20 billion budget? Who is going to provide the type of oversight that provides support but also accountability? I run a health equity program that serves over 100 million people, so I know how to make an impact at scale. But I've also walked deeply in community with people for the last 20 years, opening my home, to individuals coming out of prison, working with individuals to launch their own businesses, to hire DC residents, and working with young people in the city as well. My name is Graham McLaughlin. I'm asking for one of your 2 votes to drive positive change in the city. Thank you.
I'm Alyssa Silverman, and like everyone else here, I'm asking for one of your 2 votes. Let me thank the organizers. Let me thank WEAC Radio, Kimon, Tenac. You guys are always fighting for renters. Let me thank Reverend Hagler for being the moral conscience of our city for many, many years. There's a reason why nurses, grocery store workers, construction workers are supporting me, because I've delivered for them, for working people in this city. I've taken on the developers and the big money interests who want to push working people out of the city. It is a fight.
Now, I know how to make broken systems work, and that's why I'm running. I looked at my family, I looked at the future we were facing, and I thought to fix things or to try to buy my way out of the problem. And then I realized that not every family in the district has been as fortunate as my family, and they don't all have the same options that we do. So if we really want to talk about transformative change, if we really want to talk about making sure that we have a future that is better for all of the district's children, then you need to start looking at the candidates who can bring change, who can bring a different perspective, who can actually make something happen on day 1 when they come into office. Kareem Marshall, number 2 on the ballot. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you again. My name is Fred Hill. I am number 3 on the ballot. And I bring the desire to see our police department officers, our educators, the cooks, the janitors, and our sanitation workers, also fire and EMS, all get a 30% pay raise because they're grossly underpaid.
Go ahead, Fred.
If you don't want to give them a pay raise, then take the DC income tax away from them and real property tax away from them and make them new homeowners again back in the city. And the other thing that's going to do is people are going to spend money where they live. That's going to raise our tax base here in the city. Stop giving money to the developers and make everyone who earns over $1 million a year pay their fair share of taxes. I'm Fred Hill. Thank you.
I'm David Schwartzman. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. That's no reason to vote for me. Okay, we've heard that before. So why support me? Because I'm committed to using my office, the full resource of my office, to organize a movement outside of the city government, because that's the way to get real change. Okay, and the example was last summer when the hike on the tax rate of the rich was passed. By the way, in the first vote, Mendelson, McDuffie, and Barnes voted no. The second vote was unanimous, and the mayor didn't dare veto it. Why? Because there was a strong movement outside of the council, outside of the mayor.
10 seconds.
I'm for the many, not the few. Okay? If you put me in office, I will fight for working class.
I'm running to be your next DC Council at large. I'm a 3rd-generation Washingtonian, a project engineer, a Naval Reserve officer, a husband, a homeowner, and I'm trying to make the city a better place for everybody. I vow to make sure to show up in every single community, to make sure that I am accountable and have the integrity for everybody in Washington, D.C. And I'm asking you to have one of your 2 votes this upcoming November 8th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. I can keep it brief.
Thank you all for a great discussion, and good night.